in your head when he's going to leave us and go to Africa, God would have to be very clear. Don't want to do that. I really enjoyed it. I think it was one of the top 2 spiritual moments of my life, which is why I'm excited to share with you. But how it relates to here, I was excited to bring it back. Matter of fact, I never thought there'd be a place where I got more sleep at home with a newborn and a 2-year-old than I would there. The reason that is, you would never believe this. We're staying in a nicer place. I didn't stay in like a hut on a dirt floor or anything. I stayed in a nice house. But every night, the windows are open. There's no air conditioning there anywhere. And I mean anywhere. It's very hot in places. But there's no air conditioning, so the window's open. Every night, these dogs that are there for security would go nuts. And I mean like multiple times a night. And I'm like, about after the 3rd night, I actually told the co-founder of the organization I hated her dogs, and I hope that they die. Really. I was very serious too, and I was tired, I didn't have sleep, and I get a little grumpy. And I say all that to what got me through is every time the dogs would bark, and I'd be up for multiple minutes, and I was like, I can't fall back asleep. I'd get up and I'd open up a letter from one of you guys. Somebody wrote me, and my mood would get better, and the dogs would finally stop for a couple minutes, and I'd get back to sleep, and I'd repeat the process day in and day out. The reason the dogs were going nuts, I finally, why in the world are your dogs? Are the people? Like, what is it? There are monkeys going through the trees each night, and they're disturbing the dogs, and the dogs would bark at them. Monkeys. And I'm like, then my new goal was to see a monkey outside at night. But they locked the doors so we couldn't get out because the dogs would hurt you, and no sleep. So I was like, I thought I was getting away from the kids, I'm going to get some more sleep. No, so it's all the monkey's fault. But thank you for your letters to keep things going. So my big goal was to touch a monkey. I know, not hold it because that seems a little far-fetched. So I tell the African people, man, I want to hold a monkey or touch one because I've seen, it's so cute. They bring the monkey or the lemur and they'll put it on your shoulder. These exotic pet people, I've had that happen before. They're like, they looked at me like I was really funny. They said, to you, monkeys are cute. It's the same thing in America as squirrels. You don't want to pick up a squirrel and hold it because it's cute. We think squirrels are cute. And I'm like, okay, I get it. So I didn't try to actually hold a monkey from there on. But what I found out in Africa was actually we're not a whole lot different. And the stuff that they struggle with and deal with is the same stuff we struggle with here. And after I pray, I just want to share some verses to think about. And then I'm going to share the story, and I'm going to get back into the verses at the end and see how it all relates together. So let's pray. God, I thank you that we live in a different world over here. And it's a world that we've gotten accustomed to, and I'm thankful for it. God, but I pray in thankfulness that you showed us new things each and every day. I pray that we open our eyes, as Kirsten said, your spirit that moves, what you're prodding us to do, what's going on around us in our community, what's going on around us in our families, what's going on around us in our church families. Help us to just be aware and how we're supposed to be Christians here in Columbus or across the world. God, I thank you for what you've shown me, God. I thank you, God, what you're going to open the hearts of us today to show us even more. We just give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen. So the scripture I want to share, and you can, this is actually going to be the only scripture of the day, the bigger scripture here, is in Galatians chapter 6, verses 1 through 10. It says we harvest what we plant is kind of the subtitle here, which is a good time, harvesting season. But it says, dear brothers and sisters, if another believer is overcome by sin, you who are godly should gently and humbly help that person back onto the right path. It's hard to do. And be careful not to fall into that same temptation yourself. But then verse 2 is what really got me over there and what gets me here in our discipleship series, is to share each other's burdens. And in this way, obey the law of Christ. Or another version says, if you share each other's burdens, it fulfills the law of Christ. Like, it's a huge deal to share each other's burdens. And as you'll see, I've seen some burdens that are different than ours. And it was easier for me to share there than it is here. And I'm like, why is that? They say that people there turn a blind eye to the problems. And I'm like, well, we do that in America. There are so many things that are in comparison. But the biggest part of today, and I want you to think about this verse, share each other's burdens, and in this way fulfill the law of Christ. If you think that you are too important to help someone, not that any of you have been here, you are only fooling yourself. You are not that important. This verse relates to my whole trip. Pay careful attention to your own work. Worry about yourself, basically, for then you will get the satisfaction of a job well done, and you won't need to compare yourself to anyone else. In my commentary of this, my Bible says, if you work your hardest and try your best, then there's never a need to compare yourself to anyone else. I was like, wow. For we are each responsible for our own conduct. Or in other versions it says, for we each bear our own load. Those who are taught the Word of God should provide for their teachers, sharing all good things with them. Verse 7, don't be misled. You cannot mock the justice of God. You'll always harvest what you plant, or always reap what you sow. Those who live only to satisfy their own sinful desires will harvest decay and death from the sinful nature. But those who live to please the Spirit will harvest everlasting life from the Spirit. So let's not get tired of doing what is good. Let's not get tired. In just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. Therefore, whenever we have the opportunity, we should do good to everyone. But listen to this. This is not like a mess up here. In all versions, it says, especially to those in the family of faith. So, in our family of faith, or no matter where you're at, it's our family, right, of Christian believers, are we sharing each other's burdens? Are we doing good for everyone? Or does it look a little bit different because we get in our own ways? Well, there's a main street, and it was similar to the video in some ways, but a main street that separates the slums, right, from the normal people, which are least fortunate if you live next to the slums, and then there's different categories. Nairobi, Kenya is the capital. It's a very wealthy city. There's a lot of industry and stuff, but there's only so many jobs compared to the amount of people. So there are some very good things in Nairobi happening, and then there's some very bad things. The mayor, who's been a mayor for approximately 25 years, came and did something in the slums area for the Missions of Hope International that I went with to see. And he said, that's the first time I've ever stepped foot in the slums here, or even knew that they were there. So they do a great job of turning a blind eye, but then I was like, where in my community do I drive past, but I won't go down there? Or I'll turn a blind eye. It happens often, believe it or not. I know that sounds horrible, but it does. It's the same stuff. Just like America, they claim to be a Christian nation. Matter of fact, on every public transportation vehicle, there's Jesus is Lord, or God is our Savior. There's all kinds of Christian quotes right alongside with Run DMC or Tupac or these rappers. And it's all like on the same vehicle, and they're rapping, but it says Jesus is Lord on the side. And like one person explained it, they're very wide in their faith. They all believe there's a God, but they're not deep. Welcome to the same way we deal with here at times, right? There are churches everywhere there. Matter of fact, I probably see more churches there. Like everybody teases me, like, "Oh, you're from a small community. Around every corner is a church." There, it's the same thing, whether they're doing really great or not. But the people's problems, and this is the part where I was probably stunned the most. I thought I had it going on. I'm from America. When I sat across from people, they had the same problems, and the same solutions were needed. And it was no different than what we deal with today. They're worried about their families. They're worried about their health. They have, prayer concerns by the mile, just like we do. They're worried about jobs. They're worried about the same things that we're worried about today. And so I went to advise them. I'll be honest with you, I know what I'm doing. We're from America. But I left very humbled and with a very different perspective. Like I said, it was probably the most spiritual ball bat God took over my head and said, listen, we all bleed the same. That song, some of you hear it too much on the radio, but it means that we all have the same issues, right? We all have the sin issue, and we all need a Savior and a hope. And so wherever you're at in the world, and it could be just down the street, we all have the same issues. But the area I was at, and what made it a little different, you're like, well, why would you go over there when we have problems here, right? Nairobi, Kenya is about 3.5 million people call home. 3.5 million. Okay, that's a big number, but it still doesn't relate, because it was a big area. Inside that, there are a few different areas. I don't know how far 3.5 miles is from here. If you go past Lyle's farm, maybe another mile or so, maybe 3.5 miles. And then if you can see about half mile back, it'd probably be to the next, the woods line back here. 3.5 miles by a half a mile stretch are 500,000 people. So if that puts it in perspective, let me give you a couple statistics here. 3.5 miles by half mile, and on the internet you'll see, and I've heard all kinds of numbers, but for the most reliant, and what I've been told, there's about 500,000. Some people say there's 800,000, some people only like 200,000. But just get that in your head for a second. 500,000 people. In Jennings County, there are 28,000 people in the whole county. Put whatever times that is. In Columbus, there are 50,000 people. So take 10 times the amount of Columbus and put them in a 3.5 mile by half mile block. Right? Needless to say, they're on top of each other. Here's kind of what it looks like. If I was looking at it, there's a church here, you can tell. But it just looks, they're piled on top of each other. Like packed like sardines is an understatement in Africa. Right? And they're in these huts. They're all made out of old tin, metal, and wood. And somehow they can pack into there. And I have seen more people this last week, by far than total in my whole life. If you go on to the next picture there, I have another one. This, again, there's one side. It goes a half a mile this way, 3.5 miles there, along 500,000 people, 500,000 people, living just right here. I'm not talking about the whole city, just in these slums of huts. You're like, well, how can that be? And it's amazing that in 2001, so this lady and gentleman had an idea to start schools in these slums where nobody will step into due to crime, due to violence, due to things. But it's called the Mathari Valley, and it's based around a river. Again, it's 3.5 by half mile long. And I asked them, they had 50 students in 2001. Now they have over 16,000 students inside the slums. That's really good, right, to have that many schools, 16,000 students being educated, and are adding each semester. But the whole organization is still running around 2 people, the founders, Wallace and Mary. And I was able to sit down and chat with them. We stayed in their house, in their guest house. I can't believe I did this, but I hadn't talked to Caitlin yet, and we were supposed to talk. And so the founder of this whole organization sits down next to me to eat supper. I was like, I'm so sorry, but I got to excuse myself to go talk to my wife. Probably not very respectful, but I did it anyways. But it's amazing that we got to really talk to them. But I asked him, you have 16,000 students in your school. How do you feel like you guys have done? And he said something really profound to me because I was looking for a, yeah, let's go answer. He says, I feel like we are only scratching the surface. But if you have 16,000 students out of 500,000 people, probably at least 200,000 are kids, and as you walk around the streets, they're not in school, they're just scratching the surface. And I wonder, are we even scratching the surface of our needs in our community here? Right? And I understood soon what it meant traveling around the community, seeing so many kids. There's a picture of me next with the lady Mary. I didn't get a picture with Wallace. They're very busy, as you could imagine. But we stayed in their house. She's a very nice lady. If you watch any of the Missions of Hope International videos, she's on it because everything runs to them. And I said, I'm starting to get to see what compassion looks like, because we often turn the blind eye here. But if they're just scratching the surface, what are we doing? So the purpose of their organization is to educate, and they're doing good with 16,000, empower, they do a lot of microfinancing, getting people, because the main thing you see when you go around, they don't want to move from their homes. Even though they're rough looking, they don't want to move. They want to have jobs to be able to provide for their families, to eat, right, and to raise their families. So this organization empowers them to do so. Then they restore them through health and wellness, and then the spiritual side runs through everything. In my mind, that's great. A lot of organizations have school lists and stuff, but I wanted to know the real heart and to be able to sit down with the founders and then their staff to know that they're for Christ, and that's the only thing. They talk about miracles all the time. It's the only thing that happens. Their education system, the next photo here, what a typical classroom looks like, they just pack them in there. Again, no air conditioning on these old desks. The students have a way better chance of getting into high school, going to these schools in this system, than they do regular public schools, or slum schools they call them. So they're taking care of them with very quality education. The graduation rate is way higher through this organization than a normal. It's very cheap. They do charge the parents something to have some skin in the game to get these kids through school. But it's very successful. that's in Christ. When you walk into the room, they stand up and they welcome you and they say, God loves you, we love you, and they give you a memory verse in English, thankfully. They do teach the kids in English and a lot of it's in Swahili. If we go on to the next picture, I was able to teach them one of my favorite verses is to not fear, but to have power, love, and self-discipline through the Lord, through the Spirit. So you're just talking, they're crammed in there. You don't hear them complaining. The teachers are awesome. They just have nothing to work with besides some few books. And it's rough. The next picture, when we're complaining about our facilities, this is their school bathroom. It's a hole in the ground with a bucket of water and some things to pour over it. Interesting to get used to, especially for a female. But they have those there. But the children are so thankful. And the joy, it isn't that they're less happy living here. This is their normal. It's just like we go to the grocery store, go to Walmart, and go to their bathrooms. This is normal for them. But they're educating. Next thing they're doing is empowering, and they're not giving handouts. The next picture here shows that this is a normal classroom, and this was at 9 in the morning, so they really weren't awake and going a whole lot yet. But they're teaching welding and plumbing. They're wanting to give people access to get out. They have sewing. They create all their own things. And I'm like, we have now hiring signs everywhere here. There, it's a struggle to find anything. But their plumbing and their welding and their carpentry, they get hired before they finish the program because people don't know how to do that. And so it's awesome the job that they're doing. Give someone a fish, that's nice, it feeds them, but teach them how to fish, that's what they're doing there. So I was thankful for the skills training and the microfinancing. And what was different, I thought that we were going to go just see all this stuff, it's fluffy, like we're rich America, they're poor Africa. I won't learn anything from them. And what we did a lot was house visits. And they're very open in these slums, and you can go. And we had social workers leading us around because we do stand out, being white Americans. They led us around and we'd sit. Every house was clean kept, even though it was 10 by 10, the whole house in a hut with no water or electricity. Well, they spliced electricity. It's very shady. But anyways, you sit there and there's a place to sit. They have poles on the floor where they're cooking, which isn't really great to breathe. And then a sheet separating the beds. But we're sitting in there, and I've never been a part of an organization that wants to help not only the kids, but their community as well. And I see that's what we're doing here. If you see the stuff that we're doing out in the community as a church, I believe that we're doing a pretty good job. There's obviously things we can always improve on, but I'm thankful that when they ask, what do you do for your community, I can name off some things, and I'm really excited. But there, we sat across, and a lot of people are Muslim there, believe it or not, and there's Muslim churches, but I sat across in their house, and they had a little TV. It's the only TV I've seen. It was a little kind of black and white one, and they were watching it, and the social worker goes into their house with us, and he was like, all right, what is your needs? And they're like, well, we really need a job. And so just like a normal guy would do, he's like, well, how do you expect to find a job if you're watching TV all day? And he calls them out right in their house. And I'm with them, and I'm like, this is probably not real safe. But in Kenya, they're very honest. They're very community-minded. They don't sit and look at their technology devices all the time. And that's about this discipleship process that I see here. I'm like, how do we get past that so we start caring and have that community-type members, right? And they walk everywhere. They're always face-to-face with each other, and they'll stick up for each other. We were safe there only because the mission has a good rapport now to where after 17 years, right, they have such a rapport that we're safe. They want to protect us because they know we're helping their families. And we're part of that, right? And so I sit across from her name was Melvin, with an E, believe it or not. I've never heard of that lady named Melvin, but she was there, and her Muslim sister and friend and her husband. And I sat across, and she just starts right in. Because believe it or not, missionaries probably do go there sometimes. And she was like, I don't like white people. Great. And she spoke clear English at this point. She said, all they do is come there and they offer us something, or they pray and they want us to do what they do, but yet they leave and they never come back. And that hit me pretty hard because that's what our outreaches do. We go in our community, we help once, but we sure don't want to go back because that would get in our way. And for the first time I was able to sit there and have confidence because the social workers that were with us are there. And I told her, you're right. We have a hard time with doing that, and we think this is great. She says, you guys come all the way across the world to tell us what we're doing wrong, but not to really help us. But I was able to say, actually, our social workers do care about you, and she was looking for a job. She didn't want to go into prostitution. And he said, so I could say, follow up with them, and they will help you get training to where you can get a job and make plenty of money for your family. And she was just baffled because she thought she was on the right side. And not only that, but health and wellness. We were able to help someone in their family. But the difference between there and here that I've seen the most and in my life, they went into their world, into their families, and only didn't just go once, but they followed up. They saw what real community was like. They cared about the family, cared about the health, getting them jobs and education. And those social workers are really what was key to our whole ministry there. Which you would think the schools, the education's great, and it is. But the amount that they care about the families is what set us apart. So how in America, for me and Zenas, how do I get to that level of caring about the community? Right? It's a process, but I'm excited that's what we're getting into. And her whole attitude changed towards the end of our conversation because she had hope. But it wasn't that we gave her a job right then. You still have to give them responsibility to go to the place themselves later on in the week and take the training, right? You still have to give people responsibilities. You don't just do it all for them. It's not a handout. But they empower people. And that's what I liked about it as well, right? And they have plenty of opportunities to do that. To restore, I didn't get to see a whole lot of the medical missions part, but there was rooms in a classroom. Here, if you go to a special needs room, there's all kinds of technology and nice fluffy things to deal with. There, it's another room without air conditioning, and they have some chairs that they have kids set in, and they're packed in there with the workers. And if you're very emotional about that stuff, probably not a place you're going to get out without crying profoundly. But the medical missions, they had one dentist office for the whole organization. They give kids toothbrushes, stuff that we take for granted. At home, just for an example how spoiled we are, I'm frustrated when we don't have any more tissues in the house. I never seen a tissue or a roll of toilet paper or anything there that I knew of. And I'm not saying that's where we should go, because I don't think that's. But it's amazing how spoiled we are. But the main thing I've seen is every staff member with the skills training with the adults, with the kids, they do devotionals with them every day. The elder people, they know when they come into the program, you're going to stop around midday and we're going to do a devotional. Every teacher is equipped to teach a devotion, and they do them together in the morning because they know Christ has headed all this. If you'd have told the founders you're going to have 16,000 students in your schools when they're starting with 50, they probably would look at you like you're really crazy. But it can happen, but what can we do today here? Things can happen. We need that same faith. 1 John 4:19 explains it. For we love each other because he loved us first. It was the Bible app verse yesterday, but it was just so perfect. Spiritual need was first of all is the need that they wanted to meet because he loved us first. Now, there's a lot of talk about our building here, and we're in the fellowship center, and we struggle with this at times. And I went to church last week, the next picture here. This is what their church looks like. This is a school, because it's kind of nicer, believe it or not. It's one of the nicer places. This is a school that they rented a room. It's all open air, again, no heating or air conditioner. They rented a little space to have church in. And it was pretty packed. If you go to the next picture, on the inside, this is kind of what it looks like. It's just a tin block and a big chalkboard, and it's just a little room of a school. And it's awesome because they had an interpreter for us, but they taught on counting up the cost, which I talked about a couple of weeks ago, which I was like, that's awesome. But they did counting up the cost of having another kid. Very applicable in Africa. So it was amazing, though, as much as I complain, and I'm a complainer too, so I'm not putting me out of the box. The situations, they were just praised and worshiped. It wasn't comfortable, I'll be honest with you. They're just lawn chairs. But at the same time, it was real. And I think we do have that. And as we kind of hear just voices sometimes during a worship band, or we don't like the sound, we got to remember how real it is. Afterwards, it was more of a community. They sat there all day and kind of hung out. The next picture is of us kind of playing around with the kids out there. Again, we were the only white people in the country that I saw. And they're very interested, but the kids and them, they hang out there all day. because it's their sense of community. It's a sense of being together. They don't want to go home because there's nothing to go home to. And it's amazing. They're so happy to be at this very clean church that we would look at and we'd probably not want to put our kids down on the floor, right? And then just the gushy picture of me next with a couple of African children. There's the preacher's son and a couple others. They really love taking pictures and then getting to see the camera, right? Because they don't get to do that very often. But the thing that amazes me, the workers, and they don't, none of them live in the slums. And none of the workers or the staff, they all live out a half hour, an hour away by bus or by walking. Very few people have cars there. So you're talking people that really care. So the church are the people that are letting God use them to make a difference. All the staff, all the teachers, it takes a lot, and it's very heavy on them, right? But they got to keep up the good work, right? And they're right on point. The next picture is of a social worker named Moses. He was one of them I went into. He's the one that told the lady, like, you can't get a job by watching TV all day. He was very upfront. He's 26. He doesn't look like it, but they're all very, they've been to college. They're all very developed, and they want to help the community, right? And then the next one is just of all the staff. There's some of us. They're out. They're the ones. They're not the teachers, but they're the ones making the difference. Because kids are easy to minister to, right? They're having fun in class, but to go out and see the real problems, the HIV, the stuff, it's what sets them apart. I actually asked one of the staff members, have you ever had malaria? She's like, oh yeah, many times. And it's like we see it as, no way, we can't get malaria while we go. They've had it many times because it's part of their culture. And really, it's neat to talk about this because over 10% of you work in schools, and it's pretty neat that we do so much in our community. And just as I said 2 weeks ago, you're all part of the church. So to give you just an overall, to end it here, of what it kind of looked like with 500,000 people. Where do they live, and how's the next living conditions? If you go to the next picture. This is kind of the road through each place. There are little spots in between these huts, and that's the way up to the school building, and then another part of the school there. The cafeteria, I didn't want to look in it really because it's an open shed, and it was pretty sketchy to where we were getting our food from, but that's okay. But it's just trash. They have no trash system, so there's trash everywhere. Everything gets thrown out or burnt. The next picture, this is your typical home, what it looks like. You'll have bars over a little window that's through the tin, and then they'll have a door. Crazy enough, most doors will lock, and they are decently secure. But as you can see, this is their sidewalks. There's just trash, and that's where the sewage goes. None of these places have bathrooms. They have to pay for a community bathroom. It's not really appealing either. But if you didn't want to pay or whatever, you just go to the bathroom wherever you can. And it's not uncommon for the next picture to see kids playing because that is their backyard. Like, no joke, this is as big as they get. They're excited that they have this area, right? And this isn't like an exception. Like, I didn't try to take the worst picture. This is the normal picture. The kids are playing in the trash and the sewage. One of the leaders was like, don't bring your shoes home. Like, take a pair of shoes that you can throw away. Because he was so like, I can't believe we're going to walk around in feces. But at the end of the week, I was kind of used to it, to be honest with you. And the smell is unlike any other, right? So all this, if you go to the next picture, I thought about my daughter, Lakin. You see kids playing wherever they can. It's because that's their normal. I'm not saying all this because we need to go build them new houses. They don't want to live anywhere else. They love this life, just like we love living in our houses. But they do search for jobs and stuff, and it's really hard. If they go to town, they make $2 to $3.50 a day, $2 to $3.50. Construction work is their biggest payment, $3.50. So they just want to go make a living. They actually pay rent for these shanties that are around, believe it or not. And it's a certain amount of money. But it's cheaper as you go up, away from the river, because the river smells so bad. That's the next picture. The river there is full of trash, and that sewage that drains throughout the community, because it's a valley of 500,000 people, it all drains to the river. So they're actually like, you don't want to go down to the river, but I wanted to see all I could see, so yes, I want to go down to the river. There's the chickens, there's goats that eat the trash. If you go to the next picture, you can kind of see very vaguely there's pipes that are running through. It's just full of pipes and sewage that run down to the river. Through the ditches, they do have water, but the pipes run through the sewage part, so if there's any leaks or anything, probably won't want to drink the water. But the stench and the flies and the smell is horrible, but as you can see, kids are used to it. I'm not giving you this big spiel, so you can say, how can they live like that? It's horrible, because they probably wonder the same thing about us. How do you live like that? And why do you do the things you do? But I wanted to see it all, because really when I come back to America, I didn't want to just turn a blind eye anymore. And this river is nasty. It's the nastiest part of the town. But I told some people we were with, as nasty as that river is, it's like literally a percentage thick, feces and stuff. As thick as that is, it's still not as nasty looking as our sin to God. Not even close. And I forget to look at sin as so nasty that it's dirtier than this river, and that doesn't even do it justice to where we're at. But I think about how only that Jesus could wash us clean of that sin. And the last story I wanted to share. By this river, there was a kid that came and hugged me and this other lady. Again, we're white people, it's different for them. And just wanted a hug, and it was just nasty down there, and I wasn't paying much attention. But later on, when we were in a house, one of the houses way up into the slums, we were talking to this lady about, she had 2 kids, and she was dying of some disease, and she had 2 kids. They were behind the curtain where the bed is. And she was saying, well, he's not in school, but he probably needs to be. And the social worker's like, great, I want his name, or I can get him into a school. And he pops his head around, and it was the kid that gave us a hug. And to connect him with the kid down the river to the kid now who has an opportunity of a lifetime to go to school and maybe pass a test and maybe go out and do something with his life was what it was all about. So I think, what is it about here? That's great that I went on a mission trip, but how does that translate to here? How can we do the community? And when I go into this or see the school people, and when I see the community, I'm like, are we taking that same love and that same hope? Are we excited? I know I live with the teachers, so I get to hear the goods as well as the frustrations, right? But are you excited to share with kids? Are you excited to share with each other the love of Christ? It's Missions of Hope International through Africa is who I was with, but what is the mission of hope here? What are we giving people? How are we shaping the community? Or what shape is our community in? Right? We're all a mess in need of a message. And that's kind of what I came up with. And it's great that I went, but how does that translate to here? In the future, you're asking, what do I want out of this? I'm still praying, but I'd love for some of you to go. It's expensive, but it's something that could change your whole perspective. And sometimes you have to see something different with your own eyes. The pictures are nice and they look horrible in different places, but to see the joy in some of the kids' face and see the people that are excited that we came in and prayed at their house, or the 73-year-old that needed encouraged because her family was not doing well. It's great. And so I want to read